Hey guys. So today I want to talk a bit about finding purpose and finding meaning in your career. This seems to be a really hot topic with the great resignation and everything that's going on. Everyone seems to be looking for something that's a little bit more purposeful and intentional in what they do on a day to day. So I also can't deny that I've had similar feelings recently in regards to whether or not I should quit my job, right? There is a lot of thought into, like, can I make it on my own? And is this really what I want to do forever? Do I want to stay in the 9 to 5? Do I want to stay in corporate? Do I want to continue down this path that is, I guess, the traditional definition of success, right? So, as this is all going on, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because truthfully, I was really, really scared. I have a very strong fear of failure. Like, I am deathly afraid of quitting my job and not being able to support myself, having no income, and then regretting that choice. That fear is very real for me, and the fear of like starting over and not sure and being vulnerable. So, but of course, there's that draw, right? Everyone's talking about how you have free time to really pursue what you want. Um, and that alone will make you happy, and then the money will come, and all these different schools of thoughts around it. So I went through this journey of figuring out, what is actually right for me. So ultimately, I decided that I don't actually want to quit corporate life. I don't necessarily want to be a part of the Great Resignation. I don't think I want to work for myself. So I want to have an open and honest discussion about this topic, why and how, I guess, I came to this decision, and ultimately, some of the steps I took during this discovery process that I think has led me a little bit closer to finding purpose in my work and purpose in my career. So I don't necessarily feel as stuck or feel like I want to quit all the time. Um, so there's that. So I guess the first thing we should really talk about is how this idea even came about. Why did I feel like I want to quit or want to leave the corporate lifestyle? So it's really strange to think about because growing up, having the 9 to 5 job, having a role where I didn't have to worry about health insurance or paying my car payments or like being able to afford a meal out when I wanted to, like that was kind of the American dream, right? Like my parents were immigrants. I was the middle child of five. So the definition of success was being able to work in a white collar job, not necessarily have to do manual labor, get paid a decent amount, and not have to worry about, where the food is coming from. So it's almost like a little bit shameful, I guess, to think that, like I have all of this, but I still feel stuck or unhappy and that I want more. So there's a little bit of that struggle. But once I've, really thought about it, it's like, yeah, you can continue doing what you're doing or just be upset the whole time. That's when I really started to look internally to see if that made sense for me. The other part of it was I noticed that, even when I was going through the boot camp for data science, some of you guys may know from some of my other videos, I did a career change because I thought that would fix the issue. But sometimes that could, but I don't necessarily know if that was the case for me. I think for me, it was more so I started getting really anxious. And I feel like that's one of those words where it's hard to talk about because how do you even know when you're anxious enough to call it a problem, right? Like, is it just like a momentary stress factor, or is it something that, is big enough that you need additional help or you should be reaching out for help? And I was in that position where I just didn't know. Like, it almost felt like I was just stressed and it's normal. Everyone goes through it, right? Um, but the moments where I realized something was wrong was I was living with roommates at the time, and even now I'm living with my partner. When I get home from work or when I close my laptop after all the meetings are over, I'm actually quite irritable. Like I get really angry really easily at things, and I don't really know why. I'm just like irritated, right? Like my boyfriend's like, "What do you want for dinner?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You figure it out." Like like little things like that. Or I noticed that I was making random noises and I couldn't really quite describe it. So, for example, like we'll just be sitting in the car driving somewhere and my mind's just wandering, thinking about work, thinking about, all the commitments I have for the weekend or whatever it is. And like randomly, I'm just sighing. I'm just like, oh my God. Like, and then, whoever's driving me, my boyfriend's like, what are you talking about? What's up? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't actually know what was going through my mind, but my body felt the need to like exhale or to like release something. And it's kind of really awkward because when you're in that moment, it's like, I don't know, like I was just thinking about something relating to work or whatever, and I don't necessarily feel like I want to share it. And that is also another thing. When you realize that you don't necessarily want to share what's going on, that was a big red flag for me. Um, so, I was obviously stressed about specific things with work, right? Or I was stressed about, a specific individual or whatever it may be. But it got to the point where I felt like I didn't want to share it with my friends or my family anymore because I felt like I was complaining. No one wants to be that complainer. So like you share it once, you share it twice, but then if it keeps happening over a prolonged period of time, which I feel like for me being in that role, even though it wasn't a specific thing that like set me off or got me upset for the day, just being in that role made me consistently upset. So I felt like every day I needed, or every couple of days I wanted to complain about it. And then it got to the point where I almost felt ashamed of talking about it because I'm like, well, my friends don't want to keep hearing me say the same things over and over again. Now I'm just the complainer. Then they don't want to hang out with me, right? So when those thoughts start coming in and when you start to recognize that, I think it's time for you to take a moment and just think about, why is that happening? And that's really what made me question whether or not being in corporate or staying in my job made sense, because it's obviously affecting, outside of my work hours as well. Okay, so now that we've gone through why, I might have considered quitting and taking part in the Great Resignation, I want to share with you my process on how I made the decision ultimately not to. Like, I've decided that, I don't want to work for myself and I do need to work in corporate, but how I was able to, decide and find something that was a little bit more fulfilling for me. So the first thing I did was watch a ton of YouTube videos, watch a lot of TED Talks on finding purpose and finding meaning and how to have a fulfilling career. And I think you'll find quite a few different, I guess, suggestions. Some of them seem to be contradicting. Like some people are like, follow your passion, and other people are like, passion doesn't give you money. Find out what you are good at and what people will pay you for, and all of these things. And it's good to keep those in mind, but ultimately that didn't really help me with much, if I were being honest. I read some books, and there are tips and tricks to figure out what makes sense in your life, like how to like figure out your skills and all these things, and they certainly helped a little bit, but that didn't necessarily help me decide if I wanted to work for myself or not. So one of the things that really did help me though was actually taking a personality test. And this is like one of those, like, I don't know, cliche things, I guess, right? Like, take a personality test, let them tell you what you should do for your career. But I ended up taking something, just like a free one on Google. I think it's like 16 personalities. I think that's the name of it. I'll link it down below, but it's very similar to like a Myers-Briggs test, except I didn't have to pay for it. And I thought it was pretty thorough. But what I ended up finding, they did list some career opportunities, but I think what I found instead was confirmation of who I was as a person. So it talked a lot about my personality needing structure. I need a lot of stability. I like being told what to do or knowing exactly like the process, like this is right and this is wrong. I like having that, right? Like, I don't like being vulnerable, which means I shouldn't start my own business. Like, these are all things that I kind of knew, right? Like, I remember in college, I got voted as like on e-board for a club, and I absolutely hated it. I hated managing people. I had no idea how to motivate people or have people come to my events or anything like that. I absolutely hated it. But for a really long time, I didn't want to admit that to myself. I didn't want to admit that I like structure or I like being told what to do, because that basically told me that I would never be a leader. Like, what if I never get into a management position? What if I'm never able to accelerate my career in that sense? But it was actually really relieving to hear that in the personality test, because, it's something that I knew all along, but I wasn't admitting it. And maybe that's why I'm not finding fulfillment in the work that I'm doing, because I'm essentially doing work that's the complete opposite of my personality. So I would encourage you to take it just to see what you can find. Like, I don't necessarily think, like the job descriptions that they give or the list that they give that best matches your personality. That's not what you need to do, but at least it gives you a deeper understanding of who you are. And just some time to think about, like, is this really true? Are you hiding from yourself? Do you really feel that way? And that, I think, will help you consider roles that are better matched for you. Like for me, I knew right away after reading that, like, yeah, I don't want to work for myself. I could, but I would probably be really stressed about it and be really miserable and scared that I would never do well, right? Like, I think I need a little bit more guidance, and that's really where I thrive, right? When there's something that's very set out into what I need to do and how to accomplish it and what the rewards are. All right, so the second thing I did was actually create personal values. I did this as I was job searching. Like, I know a lot of companies have company values, so I thought, why not personal values? Like, along the same time that I was watching all these, like, what's your passion videos, or how do you find purpose and meaning? A lot of it was not only job related. A lot of them was self related, like outside of work, who you are as a person related. And a few of them that really stuck out to me, one of them talked about, like, we don't have a lot of friends anymore when you really think about it. If you needed a ride to the airport, who can you reach out to? Like, that used to be the thing where people would just ask their friends or their parents or whoever. And in my mind, I'm like, that's true. If I needed to get to the airport, I don't really have anyone to reach out to. I mean, there's Uber, but, I don't want to call anyone. So what does that mean about me? Like, I don't want to be that person, right? I want all my friends to feel like if they needed a ride to the airport and I didn't have anything to do, or I had that time free, that they do have me in mind to ask me before spending $30 or $40 on Uber. Like, I'm happy to drive them, but we've gotten to this, like, place where we're almost, like, afraid to ask, or maybe we feel that our relationships are not close enough to ask. And that kind of, like, made me reflect a little bit. Like, yeah, like, I think I have a small group of close friends, but are we actually that close when I feel like I would be a burden if I asked for a ride? So, that was something I thought about. And then the other thing is, obviously, this is I think you hear of quite a bit. It's like, how do people remember you when you die? Like, you don't want them to remember you just as the good worker, right? Your company probably wouldn't care all that much, if I were being honest. So how do you want your friends and family to remember you and know you as outside of work? Do you have those hobbies? And, I couldn't answer that. My hobby was watching Netflix and going shopping, but not buying anything, which is not that great of a hobby. So it led me to really think about what matters to me outside of work, and hopefully that'll help me find more meaning and purpose. So I created personal values. A couple of them are very similar, and they can be very similar to, I guess, company values. But, like, for example, I want to make sure that everything I do is acted on with integrity. Like, that's always been really strong. Even in my personality test, I mentioned, like, I, want to do the thing that's right, and I want people to acknowledge that it is right. So I would, even if it was like something that would hurt me in the end, I would at least want to do it the right way, or take the long way around than to, like, not do it correctly. Second one is, acting with empathy and being honest. I know that, like, if it is a tough conversation, I'd rather have it early, and that needs honesty. You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to act with empathy, because especially with tough conversations, most likely it means that emotions are involved. So I basically created a list of, like, what are some things that I can live by and really come back to when I'm feeling a bit lost. And I think that helped a lot too, because it helped me narrow down, which career paths made sense. I was in sales before, and not to say that, like, you're not honest when you're in sales, but, like, there were definitely moments where I felt like, should I do the right thing, like really do the right thing, and lose the deal, or should I do the okay thing and try to figure it out, right? But yeah, try to write down some personal values. Another thing to consider is to take vacation. I think a lot of people, get into the habit of working and not necessarily finding time to just let your mind wander. And I think that's what rest and vacation can really help you understand who you are and what you want as a person. Even if you aren't able to take vacation, maybe just set aside some time, 30 minutes, 1 hour on a Saturday or something like that. Don't have your phone, don't have your laptop, and just let your mind wander and let it write down everything that you think of. All the possible career paths you have come up with. I did this for myself and I wrote down things from like barista because I love coffee and that's like that was my dream job back in high school, all the way to like, being an architect, which clearly I know you'd have to go through years of schooling for and maybe not necessarily what I want to dive into. But I think acknowledging that you have these thoughts and acknowledging all the different potentials you can see yourself going into and what you think you actually enjoy is a really good starting point because it kind of like calms you down a bit. I think for me, I wanted to get out of my work situation so badly that pretty much like anything will do. But then I was worried that if I just pick anything, what if I don't like it? Even switching into data science, I was like, what if I go through all of this? I go through the boot camp, I go through the career hiring process, all these interviews, only to find out that I don't actually like the job or what I'm doing. That was a huge thing for me. So I think it was calming to at least go through this exercise. But secondly, taking vacation, you can actually use it as time to figure out if you actually want to work for yourself. So maybe instead of actually going on vacation, for those 5 days or however many days you take, start building your company, work on your side hustle, right? Like dedicate that 9 to 5 to working as if you were already working for yourself and see if you like it. I think what I've noticed for me is I waste a lot of time very, very easily. Like if I had a full day to myself and I have all these things that I intend to get done, knowing that I don't have to submit it tomorrow or knowing that I have an extra day tomorrow, I'm on YouTube instead. I'm looking up random articles. I'm going to go out and run errands instead of actually doing my work. But at least that'll give you a good sense of, are you the type of person who can do this? Do you have the dedication? And, like, is this really right for you? All right. And then lastly, I would say, think about what's actually making you upset. What is it that's causing you to feel like you need to quit? Is it the job itself? Is it what you're doing every single day? Are you an introvert and you hate talking to people? But you're in a role where you have to talk all the time. Is that really it? Is it because you're not making enough money? That could be a legitimate reason. Like you feel like you're working really hard, but you're still not making ends meet. Is it your manager? Is it the individual, right? Is it a coworker, an individual that's making you feel very uncomfortable and you just need to switch companies? Or have you always had issues with your manager and you don't know why? Every single position you've had, you don't necessarily like authority and you've had a hard time working with them. Like, really, really ask yourself those questions and try to understand. I think for me, it was definitely the role itself, right? Like there were lots of parts of the role that required me to be uncomfortable and step out of my comfort zone, and that is fine for the learning experience, but I realized it didn't match who I am as a core person, but I had to do that every single day, which made my life really, really miserable. I also realized that I do like working with people. I like collaborating and I like having a manager that tells me when I do good work. Like I like that positive reinforcement. And if I go out on my own and decide to be self-employed, no one's going to give me that positive like structure. No one's going to tell me what's the right thing to do. And that is really what I enjoy, or the best like the best environment for me to thrive in. So, after you take all that into consideration, it kind of told me that I do want to be in corporate. Like, I don't necessarily want to, leave and figure it out on my own. I don't think I would be happy doing so. So why would I quit then if that's the case? So I guess to wrap it all up, I went through a very similar process or thought process to the Great Resignation, and really took like 2 or 3 months to go through and think about everything before deciding what was right or wrong for me. I don't think this is as popular of an opinion. I think a lot of people who are making videos in regards to the Great Resignation and finding purpose and finding meaning, a lot of them actually point to just quitting and spending your time doing what you love and making it. And if you don't, at least you don't regret it and all of that. But I think for me, after this self-reflection, quitting actually might be a worse decision. It's not leading me in the direction that I think I actually need to go in. So I guess I want to hear your thoughts. I want to encourage you to go through a similar process and really figure out, is it right? And like, is it doesn't match who you are as a person and where you want to go? But I also want to hear your thoughts if you're feeling the same way, because I can't be the only one, right? Like everyone's quitting, but I'm over here like, no, I don't want to quit. I actually need to figure out how to change the other parts of it. But anyways, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Give me a like and a comment and a subscribe. It would really, really help me as this channel grows, and hopefully be able to share some more life lessons with you guys. All right, talk to you next time.